Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we are going to tackle converting out a lot of our Firebase user methods into a Saga. So what do I mean by this? Currently inside of the application, we actually have a bunch of Firebase methods that are asynchronous methods, but we're keeping them inside of our components. So when you think about our sign in with Google method that calls, of course, our sign in with Google pop-up, or if you think about our sign in with user email and password, a lot of these methods we are currently baking into our components. If you think about our sign up component, we also have a similar create auth user with email and password method, also asynchronous and all interacting with our Firebase API. Finally, we also have this observable listener that we instantiate on the app. And all of this code currently is living deeply nested inside of our components. With Sagas, we can attempt to remove these and put them into Sagas so that our components are more free from this asynchronous code. In order for us to do that, though, we have to think deeply about what we're trying to do. So one thing I want to know about this auth listener is that unless we are inside of a component, we don't really have a way of keeping track of some kind of listener and then unsubscribing at some point. What we should do instead is convert this over into a promise-based single check to see if there is a user. So there's a couple modifications we need to make in order to convert this into a Saga-based flow. But through doing this, we will see an interesting pattern emerge with Sagas. One thing I do want to mention is that this is not necessarily the right way to do it. Because Firebase has been optimized through their auth listener for us to essentially write this code very simply, there's nothing wrong with the way that we've coded out our app, our sign-in, and our sign-up. This is simply a way for us to code out Sagas so that we can see what happens inside of a flow where we don't have something like an observable listener for authentication. And it's also another way for us to get more practice in terms of writing out auth flows through Sagas. So this is a very important thing I do want to highlight. One thing as well is that we need to be able to convert a lot of this code over to asynchronous but more promise-based code in order for this to work as well, because generators, as we know, are essentially async awaits. So in order for us to make this work, though, we need to start by converting this onAuthState listener code over into some type of single check. So instead of having a listener that responds every time a user state updates, instead we're going to wrap this in a promise inside of Firebase utils. So first things first, let's define this function. This function is going to be called getCurrentUser because that's what we're really trying to do. We're trying to see if there is an active user that's been authenticated already. And what we want to do, of course, is convert from an observable listener into a promise-based function call. So here what I'm going to do is I am going to return back a new promise. With this promise, we have the resolve and we have the reject, which are the positive and the negative handle cases for a promise. Resolve goes down the path when you successfully retrieve the value that you want back. Reject is what happens when you usually get some kind of error that you want to catch. So what we're going to say using a little bit of cleverness is we're going to say, okay, we know we have the unsubscribe from onAuthStateChanged because we get back the unsubscribe from the listener. So what we want to do, because this is a promise, is we don't want this listener to stay active. We want to unsubscribe the moment we get a value. Now, this onAuthStateChanged is what we get back from Firebase. We're not actually using the listener that we created for the actual application because now we're trying to modify it. So onAuthStateChanged takes the auth object and then it takes the callback. And the callback, of course, gives us the user auth when it successfully gets a value when it first instantializes. The moment it instantiates and it gives us the user auth, we'll know immediately from that user auth whether or not there was already an existing user logged in. If there is or isn't, doesn't matter to us. The key thing is that we have the value and immediately we're going to unsubscribe. So we're going to close the listener. If we don't do this, there will be a memory leak, meaning that that listener is always active inside of our file, but we don't want that. We don't want it to take up more memory. So once we unsubscribe, we are also going to resolve with the user auth, because now, of course, we have the actual user auth. Now, remember, this listener itself is asynchronous. So we're going to resolve the moment we get the value anyways. Once we're done with this, the other thing that this onAuthStateChanged takes is a third optional parameter, which is a callback that runs when an error is thrown in the process of trying to fetch for the user auth. This is where we're going to pass our reject. Reject is a callback that takes the whatever you pass to it, usually it's an error, and it will actually reject it so the promise knows to reject. In this particular case, we're passing reject to this onAuthStateChanged listener. The reject will pass the error into it, and then everything will behave as we expect it to. So this is our getCurrentUser. If I copy this and I go into our app.js, and what I'm going to do is I will remove all of this code that we don't need anymore. And what I'm going to say is, hey, just getCurrentUser. Just so we can test. This might actually end up being the way that we set up our code, but I want to test this function to see if it works. Inside of getCurrentUser, remember, this gives us a new promise. So I can actually call .then on it, and .then will get us back the user auth, which we can console log. So here, if I save this, and I go back to the application, there we see it logged. This is our user because we have a signed in user, and it runs when our app mounts for the first time. So using this method, we have now managed to essentially move out of that listener. So what we can do now is put this inside of a Saga, which will trigger a check. From here on, we need to now migrate the majority of the code that we have across the sign-up form, the sign-in form, and this app.js into a Saga and a series of new actions that will all perform these behaviors for us. So now I want you to join me in the next video where we will continue breaking this up and thinking about these flows, but now in the context of sagas. I'll see you in the next video.